fun, and the Lysianthus too, I think has a good potential.
Oh yeah, totally. I agree. So up next we've got Dr. James Keach. Shoot, James, where are you? Dude, I don't even, who is this man? Okay, there we go. James Keach is now the associate extension agent, so recently tenured associate extension agent for ornamental crops and master gardener coordinator for the University of Hawaii at Manoa, CTAHR, in the county of Kauai. His background is in plant breeding, and he has worked with a range of ornamental and edible crops in various parts of Hawaii and in Southeast Asia, as well as other places. He's particularly interested in responsibly increasing / leveraging the diversity of plants for the local floriculture industry, including those in CTAHR's collection on Kauai. Orchids are his first love. Yay. And he is also active with the American Orchid Society's judging program in Hilo. So thank you, James. And let me give you this, and then as you get started, I'll get you. So get the wine you want. All right, but let me get you loaded up. You can start. Yeah. Do you how do you normally show this one?
Go to view.
Oh. Yeah, that's okay. We got it. Uh-oh. I'm gonna get this. I'll get it. I'll get it. Do you have a joke to say?
What do you call a tree that grows in your hand? A palm tree. So it's the only joke I know.
There we go. What where do rainbows go when they're bad? Prism.
Oh, that's great.
All right, there we go. James.
Thanks so much, Russell. And thanks, everyone. Really appreciate it. Yeah, so I'm so thankful to HFNA for letting us update each year. It's great to see everyone's different projects going on, hear all the different things happening across the state, and have an excuse to kind of get together and talk with old friends as well as new faces. So I'm going to talk a little bit about some newer things compared to some of the stuff I've talked about in the past. But I'm really thankful, especially that HFNA has given me an opportunity to test out a lot of these and see how different folks are interested. It's helped us set priorities in terms of the germplasm we do have. For folks who haven't been to Kauai and seen CTAHR's facilities, we have a 260-acre station, which is great, but we only have 2 ag techs for it and no student help. So we're really trying to set priorities that way. That being said, I can't help myself. And so I did put in a trial last year, a new trial on ornamental curcuma. Curcuma, for folks who aren't familiar, is turmeric or olena. It's been around for a while as a cut flower. See if the pointer works. Yeah. So you can see in this incredible design, I saw it grace flowers a few years back. And then also, while I was working at Puna Chocolate Company down in Hilo, gosh, a few months ago, I happened to see a different species there. Really nice, related to gingers. They tend to dry well in my anecdotal experience, but not super common. And there's a lot of diversity that I wasn't seeing in the local market. So last year, I think the day before I came and gave my research update here, went and put in a trial of different types that I had found across the state. A lot of them from Garden Exchange here in Hilo, some of them from Home Depot, some of them from other collectors, and I know there's a bunch of them out there. I'm going to go through and show everyone what they look like at this point in this year and when they started flowering, but I do want to say I don't have a lot of quantified data. Again, lack of labor. I'm trying to get them all on the same page, and then we're going to be replanting them and try to have a little bit more of a legit trial afterwards. But we put in about 32 plants. There are a few repeats in there, and we have several that the names disappeared on. Someone got really ambitious with the power sprayer. So we're trying to go back through and compare them to photos that hopefully I took when I bought the plant. They were all in a single row next to our taro planting. and as I said, put in the same date just about a year ago from today. And different species as well. Some of them we have info, some of them we don't have species info. So it's been a fun learning opportunity and lots of opportunities to learn even more in the future. But the earliest variety, last year, someone had asked about the flowering window on these. There was sort of a misconception that they only flower in the spring. Sure enough, Zedoaria, which is probably the most common one here for cut flowers, does flower early. It flowers in April typically. The one in our field barely put out a flower. I think it didn't like being transplanted. So I took this picture of another cluster of them just to kind of give you all an idea. One thing that I hear regularly from florists is they love curcumas. They think there's a lot of potential, but the stems tend to be pretty short. And you'll see that as kind of a recurring theme with some of these. So April is definitely the earliest. After that, nothing in May, but then we started getting more flowers in June. I should say I took pictures throughout the year, but put these in based on when I started to see the most flowers sort of coming out. We had an unidentified variety that had these really nice taller ones, kind of the tulip type, as I believe they're called. And then this one on the left was actually in an edible turmeric trial that was in the same field, but had pretty flowers coming out. So I grabbed a piece of that. We'll be including that planted in with the trial next year. In July, we started getting a little bit more production, had one named Aussie Plume, where you can just barely see that flower in the middle of the leaves there. I tried to take flowers around the edges, and I think some of them I have different perspectives, but this was kind of a common issue with some of, especially these larger leaf types. We did have Zebra Chocotop, which is a great name, that was a little bit easier to kind of see the flowers with. Nicer stem in terms of the length as well at the bottom, but still not super long. And then something even shorter, Sawadi Honeymoon. This was one where the color is great, but boy, almost no one can use those stems unless you're like doing it in maybe a small bowl table arrangement. Really nice color though. So again, still in July, we started seeing Lotus Ginger Hot Flame. So this is when we do know the species. Again, that's sort of clustering in with the leaves. Some nice pinks. Other one, Mejo Elite. So similar to kind of that first unnamed variety that flowered a little earlier. This, we believe, comes from Mejo University in Thailand, their breeding program there. We're hoping, working with some of the local vendors, we'll be able to source some more of the elite materials from Thailand in the future. And then Twister, which I really like the color contrast on it, but again, just these super, super short stems. Still in July, Coral, another one that's nice, but really kind of hiding within the foliage. Another and two other unidentified ones. I believe these were the same Lotus Hot Flame, but I'm not totally sure, so I want to compare them a little bit more. There were several different color forms that were all being circulated under the same name. But same sort of thing. And we do see some color change as they mature. This one tended to turn a little bit whiter as time went on. Some of them darkened a little bit, but overall it was kind of the same color. So getting into August, we see Olamana Gem, again with similar kind of flowers to the one I showed in the previous month and the one before. This was one of the nicer ones in terms of like really easy to see flowers, decent amount of stem compared to flower, even if the stems still aren't super long. Enchantress, which had a really nice contrast to it. I know talking with Tessie before about some of the florists have said contrast can be difficult to work with, but it's really striking in terms of a landscape planting. And then somewhere hidden in there, a plant of sweet memory that has a kind of flower tucked in there in the back. Snowball was by far the most unusual. They were just barely out of the ground. These were also sort of fasciated flowers, so they were really kind of contorted. Someone was convinced the plant was sick, but I looked online and that is apparently what it's supposed to look like. Vigoro Havana that seemed to do well, and then Solo, which was another kind of one of those tulip types. Also still in August, we have Lotus Ginger Hot Flame White, so similar to the one I showed the previous slide, but the white form instead of the pink form, and then Amada. and another unnamed variety, and another from the Swati series, Maroon Heart, which again, really nice dark color, but as I said with these other ones, just super short stems. Finally, getting to the end and going back to the edible trial, we're starting to see some of the edible turmerics flowering again. We start to see these white flowers. Potentially, white is a great color for certain arrangements, especially things like weddings. So I have been kind of keeping an eye on them. Lower productivity than the types that have been bred for the flowers, but still probably going to continue and repeat it. We did also have quite a few that didn't bloom, and so I'm hoping that by kind of taking care of them in the field this year, we'll be able to transplant them into a new field and induce them to flower next year. But there are a few that were really nice for foliage. I know this is something that Xetoaria is used for in the trade. And so we see Stardust that has that kind of Xetoaria like red midrib, and then Snowdrift, which gives me really strong hosta vibes. So I think, could be potentially good for foliage, but also could be nice for landscaping, since hostas, I think, have some challenges growing here. So upcoming stuff I'm going to try to do with curcumas. So talking with Dr. Kiley, when I first suggested this project 3 years ago, he said, oh yeah, you just need to plant them in the shade and that'll make all the stems lengthen. We've seen variable results with that with Xetoaria, but we are going to try that with all of this trial. They're making me take it out because they want to till the field anyway. And we have a field of vetiver that we're going to use as kind of an overhanging shade crop, and then plant at least the best ones from this, as well as some of the ones that haven't flowered, and see how they do with a little bit of shade. I'm also going to try propagating some of these, especially the ones that seem to produce the most. So if folks are interested, can't make any guarantees of when we would have this, but it's been a lot of fun. And as I said, I'm still trying to find new varieties. I stumbled across this one in Home Depot just, a month or so ago. You can see it's just starting to flower now, stuck it in the ground, and we're going to kind of keep going with that as I get some other ones. I saw one at Garden Exchange, so I drove by this morning too, but didn't have a chance to stop in and get it. Yeah, so kind of very initial, but just to give folks idea of what's going on with that. I know Lois asks me about this every year, so this way I actually have something I can report. Moving on, so talking a little bit about growing orchids on invasives. Some of this is kind of basic in terms of background, but I want to get everyone on the same page. So we started a project based on some conversations with growers from the American Orchid Society judges that were talking about challenges in sourcing potting material for orchids. Costs are going up on a lot of them, as well as availability, partially due to tariffs, but also things like coconut rhinoceros beetle, which has really limited what we can sort of bring in. A lot of folks were using orchiata for kind of some of the higher value orchids. This is imported from New Zealand. My understanding is the availability of this has dropped precipitously, and there are folks bringing in pine bark materials from the mainland, but I've heard anecdotally from several growers that they've been losing crops to using some of the mainland pine bark, and so they're trying to switch it up a little bit. We do have a natural supply of cinder, which is great, but not a great nutrient source for the orchids, so we do need to increase some amount of organic material. And coconut coir, I was recently in Thailand, which I try to remember to talk about a little bit. A lot of growers there just use like chunks of coconut, slap on either side of the orchid and put that in a pot. It seems to work really well for some dendrobiums. Little wet, especially where we are on Kauai, we get to see a lot of root rot with that. And it does need to be processed to some extent in terms of chopping, leaching, all of those other things. And as I mentioned, anytime we're dealing with anything that's organic, especially if we're transferring it into the state from or between islands, more and more concern about CRB, coconut rhinoceros beetle. So tree fern is something that I've been interested in for a while, especially as someone who grows orchids themselves. This was the gold standard, and you see it described in a lot of publications as such. Historically, you saw a lot of it coming from the Caribbean and South America. It is almost impossible to find now on the market, has been my experience. I bought these pieces in the center and asked the guy where they got it, and they said they brought it in 10 years ago, and this was the last of their stock. So felt really lucky. I did see someone recently bringing in slabs of a softer kind of tree fern from New Zealand. It's about, what is that? Oh, that is not 2 by 1 centimeter. Oh, yeah. I forget the exact dimensions, but roughly something like this, two thin panels for $24. Just absolutely something that no grower could afford to grow plants on. And occasionally you'll see folks selling hapu'u, which I believe is mostly selling the native type. It's a great substrate, but the plant is very slow growing, about 3.5 inches a year, so not a very renewable resource here. So fortunately, question mark, we have an invasive species of tree fern here, Australian tree fern, which does seem to, it's certainly abundant, and I wanted to see how it would do as a media for growing orchids. It's a little bit different in terms of configuration. You can see over here on the left, far left, this is kind of the type I was getting from the Caribbean, more of what we used to see folks growing on. And then this is what from the Australian tree ferns. You can see kind of a looser texture to it, little bit more crumbly, but similarities. Again, question mark, fortunately had this giant chunk of one. We found a dead tree fern in the back of our station, took an oobar and some aggression and managed to leverage it and dry it out in our greenhouse, and have been lopping chunks off of it ever since and testing it out. Again, don't have tons of quantifiable data, but I wanted to experiment on a few orchids and see how they were doing. Oh, before I go on, I did want to say if anyone does decide to work on this at all, conservationists have implored me to remind folks, if you want to tell apart the different tree ferns, native tree ferns tend to have kind of reddish brown hairs, sometimes more red, sometimes more brown, but not really outside that color range. And Australian tree ferns, the invasive ones, almost always have whitish hairs on the new fronds. So a pretty easy way to distinguish them. But preliminary growth results. So I tried putting a pretty wide range of different orchids on, both mounting them onto the Australian tree fern and using it as a component in media. See things like Phalaenopsis, one of the novelty types where it seems to be growing well, a Brassivola, and then also mixed in pieces from the inner trunk of the tree fern. Not a plant physiologist. I don't know what the proper terms are for some of these different pieces, but the orchid roots seem to love it. I was particularly impressed with this Cattleya granulosa, which I've been told is difficult to grow, but the root growth on it has been really incredible. So I'm tentatively hopeful with that. We're also starting to see flowering on it now that this has gone on for a few years. Again, different types of Cattleyas mostly, just because I have a lot of those in my collection, but I've also been flowering small Vanda species like Vanda falcata. Oncidiums, we're getting some growth on them. And again, I don't know what the name for those scales are on the inside of the tree fern, but they seem to be growing decently well. And shredded, which I know is how some growers have been using historical tree fern sources for things like lady slippers and getting decent growth on those also. Talking with growers again, got inspired to test out some other types of invasives. So went and we had some folks trimming all sorts of trees around the station. So I decided to grow several seedlings of orchids on different invasives. So each row of these is the same orchid hybrid or species, and then different materials. This was about 2 months ago, so I didn't get an updated picture yet. We're seeing most of the seedlings are still surviving. We're getting root growth on quite a few. There are a few that seem to be suffering. And that was one of the concerns of using especially Vive or strawberry guava, is that there's some evidence of allelopathy with that. And so we wanted to make sure that even though there's an abundant source, it's a nice hard wood, that it wasn't going to be poisoning the orchids essentially. Looking into all sorts of things in the future with it. So again, quantification, I'd love to get some more quantifiable data from this. Spore control is something I've been gently and not so gently reminded about several times, that if we are harvesting an invasive species, we want to make sure we're not spreading that invasive species as well. So we're going to be looking into some easy treatments that we could do to kind of make sure that the material we're working with is good. And different ways of processing and harvesting. I've used sawzalls, I've used bars, I've used all sorts of different things. there has to be a better way. So I'm going to be looking into some more options there. And expanding the invasives tested. Someone had suggested they wanted to see how strawberry guava looks like as chunks, kind of like we use pine bark currently. So we are going to be chipping it and seeing if we can get good sized chips and using that, and maybe even some of the Norfolk Island pines that were taken down around the station. And a wider range of orchids as well, because I'll use any excuse to buy more orchids. I did want to just super briefly talk about, this is kind of from my other hat as the Master Gardener Coordinator for Kauai. So I do work with edible crops in that role a little bit. We were asked to do a basil trial. This was also in concert with some farmers, but we have a lot of folks who wanted to grow basil, but we're finding that most of the basil out there, especially heirloom varieties, is really susceptible to downy mildew. And there are hybrids that are resistant on the market, but they are all hybrids, and so you can't save the seeds from them and get reliable progeny. So we did a trial of, to double check my numbers, 11 different basil varieties. And then since we had the field open, we also did 7 varieties of shiso over here on the left. As checks, we grew UH's basil variety and then Genovese, which is the standard Italian type. And you can see a kind of stark difference of how well Genovese is doing versus a lot of these other ones. I'm not going to go too in the weeds on this because I know that's a little already outside the range, but there's a few that I think might be interesting from an ornamental point of view. Cardinal has been really the standout. This is almost no downy mildew. We haven't done taste tests yet, so I make no guarantees in terms of that. But the other nice thing about it is the flowers are really nice contrast, kind of this dark maroon. They flowers late, but it forms kind of towards the end. And so I think it might be useful in edible arrangements. We've also seen Kifambusi lime might be a cute type for landscaping. And we're also seeing some variation in shiso, but not beyond some varieties just dying. We don't have like huge differences to evaluate yet, but we're going to be working with a chef on that. Super quick, some upcoming projects. Going to be, again, talking with some of the orchid growers and judges. They want to see what different viruses look like symptom-wise on different types of orchids. I have a bunch of vandas that I'm going to be sacrificing to this project. If anyone has some lady slippers lying around that they want to also sacrifice, please let me know. I haven't been able to find a good source of like a tray of them. But we're going to see, and I'm probably going to work with Russell on this as well, see what we can kind of pull together. Had a grower ask me about growing orchids organically. It's not super high on my list, but we do have an organic agent and we have plenty of organic fertilizer, so we might do a small trial of that. Trip to Thailand, I heard a lot about doing tissue culture without an autoclave, which is good because ours is definitely a safety risk if we tried to use it. So going to be trying to set up a tissue culture training when I get some free time, but probably getting some stuff going in the spring. And again, in the Master Gardener hat, micro dwarf tomato trial. And if any of those are cute and might make good arrangements, I'll let you know as well. With that, mahalos to our station staff, especially our new farm manager, started just in time to plant the turmeric trial, Derek Kiabu. Some of y'all I think know. Emily Kirk, who is our sustainable agent and also does edible crops for the curcuma work. American Orchid Society judging program, where I get lots of ideas from things folks are struggling with. Kauai Invasive Species Committee for cautioning me on the Australian tree fern, and the Master Gardeners for working on some of those projects. And of course, HFNA for this opportunity. We're trying some other stuff too. This was a spoon that was getting moldy in my nice humid apartment, so decided to grow an orchid and seems to be doing all right on it. And if you're interested in orchid geekery, Caleb from Jungle Mist Orchids and myself do a podcast, release about 1 episode a month, where we deep dive and also answer listener questions. I think that's it. Just barely.
You caught us up, thanks. And James did a great job along with Anna getting us caught up on time wise. So we'll give him maybe one question, and then we'll move on. Let's see if
I see a hand raised, but
that's our hand raised for some reason. I think somehow we raised it.
existential.
I'm gonna lower my hand. There we go. Any online? Oh, Tessie did have a good comment. It's actually over here. But Tessie mentioned for the curcuma, the short stem curcuma may have been bred as a potted plant. Was just a comment. Yeah,
That would make sense.
yeah.
Yeah.
I want to test that stardust. That stardust looks like virus, actually.
It does look a lot like virus, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
Has it been tested?
No.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
we'll see.
Okay. We gotta let Eric ask his question
Okay.
as the boss.
The curriculum,
Yeah.
so where will you be possibly considering maybe do a survey and what the materials, so we can prepare funding maybe for that?
Yeah,
Right.
we're probably going to be replanting in maybe 2 months. And then hopefully we'll have some material in flower next year. I was hoping to bring cut flowers this year, like I've done in the past, that were enough past the flowering season that there just wasn't a lot of stuff I could bring. But I could bring it to some other event, maybe a little bit earlier in the year, maybe in July or possibly August, and see what folks are interested in. And by next year, we should have not tons to distribute, but we can potentially get some once we figured out if it's virus or not.
If we can communicate and.
Yeah, for sure.
We can get, that'll be a 1 year.
Yeah.